Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Mittal Foundation. So mine is not a presentation where I walk out chuffed by showing some projects, but it's a submission where I look for some pointers for the practice, and I would like it from you all. Okay, yeah. And I do this one? Okay, yeah. How? So our constituency in our practice wasn't this, not the rich or the near-rich, but it was this, the middle class in Bangalore, much aware, and what we sought to give them was something like this, which was building with earth, sourcing the earth from the basement. So all those who are worried about what would happen to soil if we keep taking it away to build, I say that take it from what's below your feet, so you're not depriving the poor. And water, harvesting water, treating wastewater. But all this done through the tropes of the mainstream, making estimates, creating a tender document, creating bills, all that for materials which were not available in the CPWD and PWD manuals. So everything we had to almost invent ourselves. And at the same time, walking the talk. And that happened through building our own house. That was helpful. That's where all the experiments happen, and they still happen. So we call it a lab for life. And then conversations with the future home owners, home builders. And one of the things that really helped, because walking the talk, but also it's a woman architect who's going to design your home as well as help you build it. So coming with a team to build, not saying, oh, I'll design a mud thing, but I'll ask who can build. I will find out workers or vendors. No, I come with the possibility of also building it for you. And then at the same time, creating a big team of clients who are supporting the project by word of mouth, contractors, masons, electricians, plumbers, and now a team of well diggers. So in 30 years of practice, with now an office of 30, we have built about 40 lakh square feet. You know, everybody asks how many, and everything is in this lakh of square feet. So we thought we should also put in the number, and it comes to quite a bit. So we're chuffed, yeah. But it also is along with water, designing for water for homes, for parks, housing, layouts, or connecting the city to the hinterland, taking the water from the city, treated water, to Kolar, about 100 kilometers away, filling up lakes and using it for agriculture. And in all this, you had to create ways of doing it. And so here is a software to calculate for rainwater harvesting, how big a tank should you make, so that you just don't over design, you don't under design, or you design a WC pan. So Biome has this, it's designed the product, an EcoSan toilet for, in fact, this was for Kosi flood areas, and designed the toilet also how it's to be done, and went and built it. Or you get into a campaign mode of making million recharge wells for Bangalore. So it's these two processes are coming together in our practice, which is of building with earth, mostly stabilized earth, and working with water. And the reward which we cherish most is when the client says that he has low bills, low water use, and no waste, and it's all because they met Biome. But these learnings in designing of homes, we could transfer it to even larger projects. So that's a school or any other projects. Every time is looking for, how do I use earth for construction? And then larger projects and in different geographies. So Palghar in Maharashtra or Potharcourt in Nigeria, building with earth. But what it really required all the time, was that one had to train. Training was the essential aspect. You speak that you will build with earth. Now you've built a base that says build with earth, but then how do you translate it on ground? And for that, we had to go to the places. So there's Sheel from our office in Nigeria, spent 8 months training Liberian migrant labor how to make mud blocks and then build there and leaving a legacy. Now we have a contractor there who builds awful buildings, but with earth. At the same time, looking at can the buildings be waste sinks? Because this is another crisis now. So as waste sinks, getting them into the whole structure of the building itself. So these are discarded louvers by Indian Railways of fiberglass, available in Bhopal, luckily, with the kabadiwalas, and used it as a shading device on the southwest wall where paper was being stored. Or can the building which you demolish itself use its own waste for structural purpose? I'm sorry, my animation is very bad. Huh? I thought I learned new tricks. So using the construction debris as a structural material, making a foundation called well foundation, filling it up, and then making a great beam above it and making the building. So in fact, the stone walls which you see are the earlier buildings' stone foundation. So you get a very nice facade, you get to use the same material and save costs. And then looking at, can we make a building for being a quarry of the future? So this was a project where the land was available for just 5 years on lease. So we didn't want to make a building which would like last 75 years. So can we make now that every unit can either be removed, reused, or the whole building can be transported in pieces and put it up somewhere else? This starts with the foundation. The foundation is of stone chapri, which Senthil introduced us to the walls of earth blocks, and mix of all materials, aluminum, wood, and also paper. In a school of 10,000 square feet, so the classrooms are organic in shape, but to reduce the reverberation, paper tubes. So then what's next? And this is in this world of developers one is moving into, which is so well ordered, but is there a space for contingency? And that comes from the experiences. So yes, we worked with this developer about, and sometimes in 2000. He couldn't battle the bureaucracy processes. So he ended up cutting the land into Mysore parks. We'd come from south, so it's Mysore Park and not Burfi. But we made his house, the clubhouse, his father's house, and making his sister-in-law's house, while we also attempted designing apartment for senior citizens. But we were only designing homes in the layout he made, so we made about 20. But then we came to this a project, in fact, which was brought together by an environmentalist friend who talked about how do we build in future, how do we live in future, and brought about some people together. And they formed a collective. The collective helped in terms of changing the way people thought that a home should be in one particular plot, and then we can do farming. But by understanding the site, my colleague Sharat Naik is mostly involved in this project. He brought about an idea saying that let's look at the whole land as an undivided property, undivided share of the land, and you build in smaller parcels so that you have available land for agriculture. But the builder wasn't really that smart. He got trapped in the license agencies things, and we have problems with continuing. So this is the next project the builder is doing. He's doing it, he's smarter. He turns it into smaller plots as well as clusters. And at the same time, we do a project in Coorg, different geography, different context, and still building in 135 acres within 20 acres, reducing the cost of infrastructure. But a builder or a developer with deeper pockets helps us to design better. He agrees to reducing the whole land use by 20%. So 20% of the plots were reduced, but he has deeper projects and we are able to do something better. But in all of it, for us, it's always been to teach construction, even the basics, all the way to making a masonry foundation. But this is the fun part of it. Here, Vidushi, who is involved in this project in MP, knows every little home in the village. This is in MP, where the MP Tourism Board is making one room Airbnb sort of things in the villages. And we give designs, we draw the designs in Hindi, and we also know the local, that village dialect, and we design, and Vidushi knows every plumber too, and they call up and discuss. So this is, I feel, the most happy with. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's almost afternoon. So we started our career with private developers. And in our country, 95% of what is being built is by private developers, unfortunately. Unlike most other countries where the governments fuel community centers, schools, cultural centers, museums, all of that. In India, we have barely anything going on that front. And then whatever else is happening, you know how many loopholes there are to get those kind of projects. So some cases, very, very few, this would amount to less than 1% where you actually get a chance to do something that is interesting. Are these where we're building a university or a memorial or a school? But largely, it's all private development. So we can leave it at that. That's saying I will be the true architect and not do private developers' work. And I will stick to waiting for that time when I'll get that one opportunity. Or you work with a private developer and you convince them to do something that is unique, something that is different, and something that is more meaningful. The failure rate is very high. At least that is what it was. But after having finally done some projects, the failure rate has gone drastically down. So where we earlier had 1 in maybe 20 who would agree, today 7 or 8 out of 10 are agreeing to do something different. And each one of these projects has actually got us 10 more people like that saying that, yes, I also want something different. So this is one of those projects, Ras Houses, is for a cement plant. It's a housing which negotiates land contours of 16 meters in a 100-acre site. Not a single spade of mud was taken out or brought inside. We went mad because the fee was very low, because they expected that you'll do a single unit and then you'll repeat it. And we told them no. And in fact, the first call we got from the engineer was that, can I start leveling the site by the time we make the drawings? So he said, no, please don't level the site. He said, but then it'll become very complicated. I said, that's okay. So for this one little housing, which amounts to barely about 80,000 square feet, within that 100 acres, just one part, we had to make some 140 sections at various parts. So somewhere you enter the ground level, you go ahead, and then there's a lower level. Somewhere you go up. Very, very organic in nature, deep recessed windows, the contours absolutely as they are. And the project came out really interesting. And in fact, when it was finished, the client called us and said that, ye aapne kya kiya hai, you know? He said, for the first time in a new cement plant, Without the school operation, without the club operation, people want to move there. And because of this one little thing, they got convinced. So we are now doing 5 different townships for them. And in each case, they are allowing us the freedom to go beyond the cookie cutter building and make something new. This is another project, very small plot, only 2000 square meters. And in this case, we were lucky it was a new developer. So he said, "What do you propose?" So I said, "I've been coming to Ranchi. This is in Ranchi, small city in Jharkhand. And I've seen a lot of these residential buildings which are unoccupied. And I've spoken to people. I said, why are these buildings unoccupied for 10 years? Now, Ranchi, unlike most other cities like Delhi, is just growing, growing, growing. Ranchi is landlocked on all sides by Adivasi land. So land prices have gone like literally 20 times within a span of 10 years in Ranchi. And more than that, it's not available anymore. So this guy has a small plot. And I said that you're making buildings like Delhi, Bombay, Hyderabad, Bangalore, which don't breathe. Sorry, it's not all. I'm just saying general. 90% developers make buildings that don't breathe. So I said, here you got to make an apartment where every single room opens into 24 feet high terraces. And that's what made the difference. This building, unlike those which remained unoccupied, got occupied immediately. And that the balcony where this guy is standing, he was the first occupant of that building. And he gave this honest feedback, which still I remember, saying that, हम 3 साल से बिल्डिंग देख रहे थे. We never found anything that was open. It's the first time we found something that is open. So I bought 2 flats instead of 1, and I've connected them and made a duplex. So people think that this is an elevational thing, but there is this twist which is done for a reason to each window frame. So what happens is, in a small plot, you can't actually create terraces because the building will go out of the site. So these balconies, by their twist, are half shaded, half open. So you have the choice from your room to stand in the sheltered part or go out in the open part. So it's a balcony that doubles up as a terrace. This is another case where real estate developer from Chennai wanted a glass office building. I don't know why everybody wants to make glass office buildings, trapping heat, increasing air conditioning. So the entire building, this whole service core is taken on the southern side, and towards the north, all these offices open to these linear terrace spaces. And we had a lot of arguments where initially he said, why are you making terraces in office buildings? Nobody does that. Nobody's going to use it. But this office building has been very successful, and we are now doing 3 other projects for the same client, who has now opened up still further and said, now make bigger terraces if you want, because we realized that people like this. This is another case where the client was a developer, so it's not a hotel person, it's a developer. So developers think very differently. I want to make a hotel, this will be my first hotel, but I want very simple building, very clean, box windows. And here we convinced him to do a building like this, which again steps up on this terrain. There is a 9-meter drop from the bottom till the top. Each room opens into 8 feet wide decks overlooking a huge Gangapur dam. So there's a water view from everywhere. And towards the rear, there's a hill view. We got the most sustainable hotel design in the world award for this. 40% of the walls are made in local stone. 55% of the building is non-air conditioned. And out of the energy that is used, 50% comes from solar. And this is the street. It's an 800-room student hostel designed in a really organic way where buildings weave together, they move away. And by doing that, what happens is, and they're all oriented along the north-south axis, so that the sun at any time, and I've seen this, there's always a shadow, a substantial shadow, like 50% of the garden is in shadow at any time of the day, either on the left or on the right, or whichever path you're taking. And people are sitting out. It's 40 degrees Celsius. People are sitting out in the garden and are able to enjoy it. Of course, for all these, there are multiple projects that didn't happen. Like I said, the success ratio was 1 in 20 maybe in the initial stages. But now we are doing these kind of projects. So not only is there this whole transition of taking a private developer to make something more meaningful, at the same time, there is this transition from doing everything in a more sustainable way. So these are some of those projects which are now under construction. This is a school for girls in Nokha village, which is designed with deep shelter spaces, a large open courtyard. Again, there is a site difference here, but it negotiates the site. So all the contours are retained as they are. And this is now being constructed. This is a very small museum and memorial being built in adobe walls with the bamboo roof in a small city called Buldhana in Maharashtra. That is a house that we did. It's actually a very large house, but it's built totally in local sandstone in Jodhpur. So Jodhpur sandstone, the house is 35,000 square feet, built with natural courtyards everywhere surrounding the house, a large central one, and a lot of sheltered spaces. And this house is now occupied since over a year. If you walk into this house and it's 35 degrees outside, you don't need air conditioning. That is the resort that we are currently doing in Mulshi, where the entire construction is in steel and wood. This is another resort that we'll be starting in 3 months in Udaipur. Again, there is no concrete in this, all stone walls, local stone walls with metal and wood roofs. That's another resort that has just started construction. This is on a very large parcel of land. Very beautiful contours on the site. So every house is situated on those contours, and these are modules of 6 rooms, 4 rooms, like a villa resort. This is another one that we're doing in Jaisalmer. Similarly, all ground plus 1, adobe construction, lime plaster. That's another house in Gandhinagar we're doing. Again, this is adobe construction with lime plaster, no concrete. This is one of our favorite projects. It's just got complete now. It's still 3 months away. So it's a very interesting university building where all the light is through indirect up through courtyards, and you can the whole building will act like an open auditorium for the whole campus. So the building footprint can take 2,000 students on the roof, and you can just climb up from the ground all the way up to the 4th level. That's a small house we just built in Bhilwara in Rajasthan. All lime plaster, all local labor. This one is in Jaipur. Again, a lot of interstitial spaces. And this is the Rajasthan school built in Rajasthan also for this developer. So, like I mentioned, the Ras houses is part of the same project where, because of seeing the success of that, they allowed us to go beyond and do something which was more unique and interesting. So to summarize, private developers are here to stay and it's constantly going to be there. But I think you can turn them around and make something more meaningful, however commercial minded they are. And at the same time, we need to move towards creating buildings with more sustainable materials. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Rahul, and the Mittal Foundation for inviting me for this wonderful conference. I'm not an orator or a scholar, so I'll be fumbling a lot, so please bear with me. When I was first invited for this conference, I was not sure how much I'll have, if I'll have anything new to share with you all, which you all already don't know, and how I'm shifting any mainstream with whatever little I'm doing. But Rahul and Sanjeev has been very kind and supportive and has encouraged me to share my story. So here I am. I'm an architect, a builder, and an entrepreneur. I'm based in Thimphu, from where I'm running my private practice, a small construction company, and a few other businesses that have stemmed out of doing what I do. I started my career in the civil service, working for the National Housing Development Corporation under the Ministry of Works and Human Settlement, where I worked for 5 years. And then I resigned and joined a private practice called Gandhara Designs, founded by a fellow SEPT alumni, fondly known as Jason. So during these early years of my career, I was lucky enough to get involved during construction stages. For example, in the National Housing Development Corporation, I was the architect in charge for the Ministers Enclave project, where we built residences for the ministers and the constitutional post holders under one facility. So I was involved in the construction from the foundation till the handover. And then when I moved into private practice, I was also again hands-on involved in many projects, including my own family projects, where my father misused me as child labor, as the architect in the family. But it was good for me as I was involved in construction. So during these times, during these years, I started noticing the importance of construction and good quality finish in the realization of an architectural visualization. So I started thinking whether as architect I could build better, achieve better finishes without escalating the price of the construction, cost of the construction so much. And also if I start construction, if I as an architect will be able to make any profit without compromising the quality and the spirit of the design. So then my journey started. I decided to start my own practice and venture into combining these two services of architectural practice and construction. So what is the mainstream services provided by the mainstream architectural practice in Bhutan? They are design services, including bill of quantities and tender documents, site supervision and technical backstopping during construction, project management services, interior design and build, and conservation and restoration services provided by some specialized firms. The patrons in architecture in Bhutan are mostly government, the state-owned enterprises, and the CSOs who carry out these larger constructions of schools, hospitals, institutional buildings. And then there are FDI funded projects, which are mostly in the hospitality region, hotels, resorts, and all those things. And then there are private individuals who come to us with 150 images from Pinterest and ask us to just draft whatever they want. So with this, when I started my practice, I wanted to combine a few of these services. I combined design services with construction services. Tried to explain the benefit of a better design space at a relatively same cost. That was very difficult to convince because clients always think that as soon as you involve an architect, then the price is just going to go up. Then trying to ensure the quality of finish is the same by just paying attention during key stages of construction. I feel that makes a lot of difference during construction. And then as an architect, we could carry out value engineering during construction without compromising the design aspirations. Like we could use a cheaper tile option or a cheaper stone option without really compromising or changing the design language. Then construction time, the importance of having an architect on site or on a regular basis, I thought that made a lot of difference. So we tried to emphasize on that. We got fully involved in projects with the clients, not just doing design construction, but also help them get approvals, try to understand and make them understand about government regulations and also all these other formalities with the clients, because we noticed that some of the architects, just to get projects, they were trying to convince the clients that it's very easy to bend government rules and regulations. And at the end, when the construction was finally over, then the clients realized, when the regulators came to verify and uh, issue the final occupancy certificate, then many things were not allowed, and the clients ended up paying a lot of fines. So we never encourage that with our clients. We try to educate the clients of the existing regulations and the formalities, and within that framework, how we can push the boundaries and make them feel like they're benefiting the most from their project. Then we also made it a point to involve the client during key stages so that they did not feel like they're losing control when they're hiring an architect to build. So when we ask them, oh, what is your idea of what kind of colors do you want for the tires or something, like small things like that, they get very happy even if we make them select that much. So by involving them during these small key stages in construction, they felt like they're still in control. So that made them feel good. So I'm going to show a few projects that we took up in the early stages of our practice, where we thought we were doing something different with the client. This is a small bathhouse located in the valley of Phobjikha, about 4.5 hours from Thimphu. This was for a FDI hotel called the Gante Lodge. The owner was a lady from Myanmar. She wanted to do a bathhouse. It was a very small project, about 10 meters by 6 meters, but she could not find a contractor to do it. So she had this brief that she wanted the bathhouse to look very traditional with stone facades, both inside and outside, and traditional door windows and traditional roof. And all the contractors that she contacted, they were either not interested because the scale of the project was too small, the location was very far, or they were trying to dilute her ideas by saying it's very difficult to do that, so that they will just make their work easy. So when she contacted us, she gave us a budget and a timeline. The budget was not very tight, it was comfortable. And then we told her that whatever she was aspiring to build was possible. And then we encouraged her to actually stay true to the traditional concept by using the actual stone masonry and not just stone facade, which she was actually okay with also, because she was very frustrated, not able to find a contractor. So we insisted that we do real stone walls, masonry walls. It's about 60 centimeter thick. Then all the interiors were also done by us. We stayed true to the concept of traditional hot bath, where the mineral stones are heated on the fire. Instead of other five-star hotels, they heat it in the oven and they put it in the water. And the water is also preheated water in other projects. But here we stayed true to the concept of a traditional hot bath, where the water is completely heated by the stones heated in an open fire. So she was very happy with whatever input we gave, and so that's how we started our journey in this. This is a project that we took up for His Majesty's office, where they wanted us to build quarters for the elders who didn't have any families, were under the care of His Majesty's office. So they wanted a line building for these occupants, because they were just elders with no family members. So they thought they could do anything. But we came in, we were hired with a certain budget. The whole project costed only about 6 crores. And then we decided to do a building, a facility which looked like a cluster of village houses. So it took us about 2 years to build it. We used many local materials to build, like the concrete block, which were manufactured in a site nearby, timber, doors, windows, roofs, and all that. This was a FDI resort in Paro. It's called the Spirit Sanctuary. So the investor is a Dutch man, and his sons, who were based in Vietnam, did the design. We were initially involved as the local architect, doing just the local the drawings to suit the local guidelines and get the approvals. But as we got involved, they asked us if we could do the project management services also. So this was the first time that an FDI hired a completely local project management team. And we were there for 2 years. The contractor was a very senior contractor, so it was quite a challenge getting things done with him. This is a hotel, 4-star hotel in Thimphu, 46 rooms. And this was a fairly large project in 2016-17 for a local individual to give it to an architect to design and build. So this was also completely design, build, interiors, everything by us with that scale of budget. So we were able to convince the client, who's also my father-in-law, but it was not very easy to convince him. But yeah, so these are the projects. Some of the main challenges that we face is the strict development guidelines and regulations. It's restricting, but it's also giving young architects excuse to just copy paste, which I think is not right. High cost of construction is restricting the buildings owners to experiment. Standard size of the plot and high cost of land where the buildings become very monotonous. Landowners end up hiring architects just to get their drawings approved, and then they do whatever they want. They don't have much design aspirations. Difficulty in procurement and installation of modern materials, lack of skilled labor, long construction times, all deter is making people do the same thing over and over again. Preference of procuring agencies for foreign architects over local professionals. Need to build something unique. That's a word which is used very often in Bhutan. Landowners, top executives, and politicians want to be in control during design process, so which ends up diluting the design language, and of course the age of Pinterest, which is crazy. So I, in the beginning of the conference, I had a whole like 7-8 points written on how I'm going to shift the mainstream, but the last 3 days listening to everybody, I realized I didn't know anything. So I kept this part empty and thought that maybe I could, for a small country like Bhutan, I thought the mentality of the architect was playing a very important role. The architectural students which are coming out, yesterday night, Bimal was saying something very nice, that the schools are producing apprenticeship and not really professionals. I think that really resonated with me. And I think that is how a young architect should feel, but they're not feeling that way right now. Young architects who come to Bhutan are so eager to start their own practice, want to do the curved buildings and the curved roofs and so many things so early on into the career without understanding materials and all these things. I can see all the presenters over the last 3 years. You guys have devoted so many years of your life understanding these things, but this is what's missing in Bhutan. So I'm going back much more enlightened, and so I'm keeping this page empty. Thank you.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Can you change the screen?
Yeah. Yawar?
Yes.
Yes. All yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Yawar Jilani. My partner Mehboob Khan's also part of this conference, but I'm here in Islamabad today, and it's so wonderful to be speaking at this forum where we as South Asians, with our shared histories, geographies, cultures, can come together and talk about our practices and the transitions which move us forward. I was born in a post-colonial world where the euphoria of independence was waning. I, like some of you, have witnessed some definitive transitions in the subcontinent, which came to define our histories, urbanity, and architecture. The first such move was an embrace of modernity. Our political leaderships attempted to de-link us from our histories, social fabrics, crafts, and traditions in the hope of creating egalitarian utopias. We saw Corbu, Khan, Doxiadis, and many other masters come eagerly to make us citizens of an international community. Our governments, people, profession embrace this architecture as the only way forward. Our next transition was a search for nationalism. This is specific to Pakistan, I think, but maybe also to an extent for the region. And in our case, we went through a regressive political movement which found us searching for a long gone Islamic architecture, and where we started, working and developing prestige postmodernistic gestures. The next transitional move in our vanity came in the form of the Khan Awards and a process of critical discourse which looked at regionalism in a more holistic manner. We saw Hasnuddin Khan, Charles Correa, Hassan Fateh, and many others lead us to better understand the true meaning of our vernaculars, history, and architecture. This was a time of self-discovery, awakening of sorts. Luckily for my generation, this transitional move also overlapped with Mehboob and myself entering the profession at this time. So I guess we were really lucky to be entering this wonderful profession of ours at that particular time. The mantra of our practice today is really architecture for all, which is, I'm sure, goals for so many of us. We, in our practice, wake up every day attempting to seek this particular goal and working within the framework which I've put in a slide in front of you, and we can talk in our panel discussion later about this. I just wanted to come out and say that, working in Pakistan and realizing the urban and rural degeneration around us, we felt that our practice needs to work, all right, 50% within the parameters of what we might call mainstream. We work with developers, we work with corporates, we work with all kinds of clientele, and you'll see this in our work. While with the other 50% of our time and our energies, we try to reach out to the people who need our services the most, but who really don't have the means to pay for our services. And so, you will see a lot of red dots and a lot of green dots. And that's how the difference in your minds you will begin to associate with. So the first project we'd like to share with you is a school which we designed in the early 90s, which caters to villagers who had actually never received any education, and they wanted to send their children to schools and make sure that they get educated. So the initial funds or the seed money came from these villagers, and then they went out and sought donations. So we, by necessity, worked with these villagers, with the communities, and started to understand the nature of this development in a very interesting way. We then have gone on to work with a number of our other clients. Here is a low-income housing project in suburban Karachi. Then we've done some work in Afghanistan. This is a provincial hospital, which again we did for the Aga Khan Health Services. And as I had mentioned earlier, materiality to us is very important. The nature of context is very important. And our client base is very diversified. And I think South Asia allows us that diversity, from literally low-income housing to the high-end projects. So we do them all. Here, we, as you might have read, in 2022, we were hit by very bad floods. And we are right now in the process of rehabilitating, rebuilding these communities. And we're able to, with this, the nature of our practice, reach out to, a very large spectrum of our population. And we've been doing this for quite some time. This is hospital, which is again going to, which has just been built. It's a transplant center. This is one which is under construction in Karachi. And this is again serving the healthcare needs of the urban poor in Karachi, people who by no means can get to basic healthcare needs. So the Indus Hospital provides that to them. And urban regeneration work is what we've been doing. As I said, in the high-end spectrum, we work with hotels, a IT park, which we've done up north, and some other work which we've been doing. And then we've got a palette where we do these very large housing developments for developers. This is 1,200 acres, again, just on the fringes of Karachi, and many other developments. But I'd like to just thank you once again for providing us all this opportunity to hear one another, to share our thoughts, and hopefully to learn from one another, and to see how we move our practices onto the next stages in our lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yawar. Lights.
Hello, everyone. So the panel, if you missed the title, was called "Shifting the Mainstream." right? And the four presentations that we had all very clearly showed how they, at some level, without saying so, though Sharing brought it up, the idea of how do you change the mainstream. For me, what's yeah, for me, what stood out was four different takes on how the individuals were attempt to change the mainstream. In case of Sanjay, dramatic use of form and building geometry as an instrument to sort of tap into the energy of the private sector to shift the mainstream. In case of Chitra, creating a whole ecosystem and with pedagogy and training of folks involved in that ecosystem to change the mainstream. Whereas from Pakistan, we sort of saw an example of sort of a more senior practice in terms of number of years, also a multinational practice in many ways, but it used the thing the idiom that stood out for me was the 50-50, that you can do mainstream work 50%, but then there is another 50% tithe or tax that you pay doing more non-profit kind of work. Sharing sort of took it to another level. Imagine the context of Bhutan, a much more smaller economy and the tradition of master builder, where you sort of tap into the context to do several different kind of things at once, but all sort of towards creating and very explicitly changing the mainstream from within. So that's sort of a quick overview of how we sort of see the mainstream shifting from within, and individuals sort of carrying out very distinct kinds of work that stands out on its own. But overall, the purpose is to change the mainstream from while being part of the mainstream. With that, I hand over the mic to my colleague Biresh to sort of both invite questions from the audience and from the listeners online.
Thank you. This is a great pleasure, being able to see this extremely diverse, wonderful range of practice, in the force sort of panelists. So I just I have a few queries that I sort of start off with. So, you have sort of started off your work with sort of imparting very specific social and environmental values, in the projects, and you beginning from houses to moving on to, more complex, larger projects, and having, of very diverse scale and all. So I just was wondering, how did this sort of explore? How did this sort of expansion of diverse clientele, diverse project to stay with you're doing your work in a very specific way, pursuing your work in a specific way. And how do you negotiate the official norms and regulations and things which often, impede the many creative ideas that we want to pursue, So, Chitra, I would like to.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, but I would say one of it was in a serendipity and flow both. Yes, we started the work the way we did. I think a lot is owed to Bangalore and Bangalore's clientele, which we had, who were open to new ideas, who in fact forced us to think new. They asked us questions to do that. And we were also lucky that I always worked with engineers at the site. And so it's not that I trained, I don't like to say that, but we worked and we developed many things together. And that had to, what Benny said yesterday, to do with details. See, in fact, when we started doing earth construction, there was a huge failure by Karnataka Housing Board of what it touted as the largest mud colony, but it had all collapsed. And that was a lot to do with corruption, but also to do with bad detailing by architects. So we worked at the two, we straddled this and did, and there is absolutely no bylaw which says that you can't build with earth. And if you did build with earth and used arch panel roofs and stuff, you were able to get lower taxes. You could ask for lower taxes in the property taxes too. So it was beneficial in that way. And as we go on, we are always confronted, especially when we're working with developers and different regions, the bureaucracy. And that is something which we are always trying to negotiate through conversations with the developer and also the potential clients who come in. But this is how we have to do. And I think it's just been a flow and we've been just working. It's just been working a lot. So
Thank you. I have a question for Sanjay. So, from what you showed here, it seems like you're pursuing a very performance-based sort of design solutions to what are standard developer projects. And, of course, you have also demonstrated how the very diverse, formal and aesthetic and material explorations in your work. So, this sort of this diversity of scale and, these other aspects, how easy or how do you sort of, how does it happen in one central studio? I mean, is there a, um,
So the thing is, like I said earlier, we keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. And earlier, there was no success ratio at all. Then it became like 1 in 20. Then it became 2. And now, because you have certain projects that you have built, because everybody said, why I don't want to be the scapegoat, I don't want to be the guinea pig. So now that you've got these projects built and in across all typologies, the hotel, the commercial, the residential, everything. So now the clients themselves are coming and saying, we've come to you because you're doing something new and we want to look at it differently and we don't want to make this cookie cutter thing that everybody's making. So it has made it easier. But your question is that how are you doing all of this in one studio?
yeah, I mean, very, very diverse material construction, as well as formal and aesthetic pursuits. So is it something the clients demand that drives you that,
No.
or is your own?
Client demands are always there and they are multiple, from like what was mentioned, Pinterest to this, to that. But it comes from what the site is, what the context is, what are those materials that are available there, and then how you can make the best out of that in response to A, the function, B, the material, the climate, and the orientation.
Thank you. So, can I take one more question? So I mean, sharing, you have sort of shifted from standard architectural practice to design build approach. I mean, is there something, in the sort of limited construction environment in a place like Bhutan, is there something much more effective to deliver, good quality, well-designed projects, or is it something you have to do to sustain yourself in the studio itself? Or?
It was not 100% to sustain myself. It stemmed out of my interest in construction as well, and me wanting to see the design through. That I think it started with that. In the beginning, there was a struggle as well financially, but as Sanjay is saying, once you do 1, 2, 3, then people come to you as a one-stop solution for all their needs, which becomes easier for the clients. So not really because of the architectural scene or the construction scene in Bhutan, because I think the rate at which we are building over 500 buildings a year in a small city of Thimphu. So there's a lot of design work if you just want to stick to design. But my own interests in construction, wanting to do proper building, noticing that a badly constructed building which is delayed and not finished properly also gives an architect an excuse to not take ownership of that project. So noticing all those things, it was a conscious decision to move into that design and build environment.
Thank you. Just a short question for, Yawar. You showed that slide, where you had the two circles, the one in red and one in green. And, of course, your office has done a extraordinarily diverse range of projects, but, starting from, multinational corporations to, large five-star hotels to then again, these housing sort of post-flood in Pakistan and all that. So, the 250%, do they run simultaneously in the office, or do they get separated, and does one inform the other, or they're just two separate sort of pursuits,
Thank you for that. Certainly, they work simultaneously because we, as partners and our associates, we are our heart is where the green dots are, and we've got to make sure that the red dots also come together. So they really work hand in hand. Actually, the red also is our passion. When I say the red, it's really the clientele which makes sure that we as an office run or the mainstream. And then what we try to, when we try to reach out to various communities and groups of people who cannot hire our services otherwise. So they really work hand in hand. And I think that's really the dilemma of South Asia, because at least in Pakistan, we see the government sector completely lacking in their abilities to put together, there's no urban regeneration. What we see all around us is this chaos, this decay, which has come together in our environments. And so unless we all step up and try to bridge this gap, it will not happen. Or our politicians and our government bureaucracies become more informed. Till then, I think this 50-50, at least for us, is our way of making sure that we can do what is needed.
Thank you very much. Now, anyone?
Yeah.
There's one on.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Chitra, Sanjay, Sharing, and Yawar. So I'm Sharing, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yeah, okay. So I've been very fascinated with the Bhutan story, with the cross national happiness index. And there are these sort of 9 domains with 33 indicators, and each of them have this sort of equal weightage. And my question was, is there a way that this sort of discussion on the gross national happiness index has percolated into mainstream architecture where urban settlements are concerned, rural settlements are concerned, in a way to sort of measure the performance of architecture beyond brick and mortar and sort of evaluate it against the happiness index quotient of the beneficiaries or the stakeholders who occupy these spaces? So just your thoughts on that. It's an open question, so anyone can take it up.
Take one from Zoom.
Hello, Kitana Sengupta, faculty from Jindal School of Art and Architecture, asks, this is a question for Chitra. She says, wonderful and thought-provoking presentation. Could you please expand on your experience and methods of training of local contractors on building with mud in various regions?
Hi everyone, my name is Snehal. Thank you for your presentations. My question is to Sanjay and Chitra. So in your pursuit to build buildings with earth construction, what one sees is in Biome's work, there is the work taps into a culturally embedded memory in terms of the architectural language that it takes up in making these buildings out of earth. Whereas in Sanjay Puri's work, one sees that there is it taps into a cultural aspiration of what a huge part of society looks to become when we look at the West and the kind of architecture that's being practiced in the West. So, what are the factors that have led to such distinct takes in sort of pushing the same materiality? And also, what are the reflections on each other's work in that regard?
Thank you so much for the wonderful presentations, of course. And my question is, for it's open, but maybe for Sanjay more so because, and I'm going to say something. It's like my students are going to be super impressed. I'm speaking with you. So you have a big following in Nepal. My question is like you have wonderful projects and you try to diversify with aesthetics as well. But I'm just trying to think like, how would that, your diverse projects and individual houses, how would that, look in the future? How's the future generation or history going to regard what's happening now in terms of in a city scale or a townscape, the landscape, the urban landscape, the wonderful individual projects, but how do you see all these in the future getting together to become a urban landscape as such? Thank you.
Should I start? Hello? Okay, thank you, Noor, for the question. Very heavy, but let me see if I can break it down. GNH is, in the conceptual level, GNH is considered for everything, all design projects, urban planning, urban spaces, any small designs. We always try to incorporate these, the pillars of the GNH, environment, culture, identity, socioeconomics. And in many levels, we are trying to uphold as many of them as we can in every project. So the emphasis on the traditional guidelines, then the emphasis on how the environment is getting impacted by any project, then the spaces we are trying to create, whether these spaces or the projects benefit the local communities or not, those are considered during the conceptualization of the project. And also how we translate these into actual construction that is, of course, not happening most of the time. It always gets diluted as you move on. But for every project, those are always in the background, driving policymakers and designers and planners in the beginning. That's how everything starts. But then many forces come into play, and then more often than not, it gets diluted in many stages.
So I will answer the two together, yours and the Zoom question. So in fact, what one is saying is building with earth is not something nuclear science at all. It's first understanding the quality of soil. Once you understand, and for that you use a science. You get it tested and you know exactly the kind of soil, then you decide the kind of construction you have to do. Or how you have to use the earth, in which manner. And it's so versatile that you could mix and create, and you can decide on how much stabilization you want to do, or you don't want to do stabilization if the soil has more clay, etc., different ways of doing things. So that's the only part which is slightly difficult. The rest of it is quite easy. We are really working with masonry construction. Unfortunately, that's the engineers don't know about it nowadays. They know only concrete construction. They know how to make a large bridge, which most of the time collapses, but still they know only that, but they don't know the simplicity and the intricacies of masonry construction. And as Benny said, don't know the details of how to finish that construction at least. So we follow all that and then it's easy. Answering your question, well, yes, ours don't look extremely fancy or whatever. And also we've been kind of critiqued many times, is that architecture? But like we had a lot of work, so that's much more interesting than architecture. It was all because of tight plots and tight budgets. You really have to work within that budget and then you have to really control yourself. And that was the challenge most of the time. So the difference, things are changing as there are budget constraints are lowered and we have clients who have deeper pockets, but still we try to continue with the ethos that we don't want to use materials unrealistically. Use the material for the way it is, the way it has to be done. So I think it's just the language we'd like to follow, and we're continuing to do that. But thank you for the question.
So Chitra has already answered your question. So we have just started doing this. She's been doing it for ages, and we've just trained all our project leaders in what mud construction, earth adobe construction is, how brick walls are made. And they've just come back, and we are now exploring new geometries with these materials. So it's about that. It's about exploring new geometries with those same traditional materials and how you can do something that is different to experience. And answer to your question is that whenever there is something that is designed, it is contextual to that location and the climate of that location, but it does not want to blend into whatever exists, and it wants to be seen as something that is different to experience. It's not just about the look, it's about how you experience the space. And there are multiple that have been done, and you can go back in reference and see how they work with the context.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Yawar. Thank you for joining us.